What does it look like to be a successful church? And we kind of came up with our basically four measuring tools for us, and they're essentially our 4 values. I've learned that there's some rule of 3s, because I always have a hard time remembering the 4th, even though I've said them like 343 times. But it's justice. So are we involved in issues of justice? Either directly or teaching the suburban people in our area to care for justice. Because Jesus kind of cared about the poor a lot. So are we caring about the poor, and are we teaching others to care about the poor? That was one thing. The other one is locality. And so how are we involved locally in our community? Do people know we exist? Do people care we exist? Do people look at the well and go, oh, those jerks always park in our driveways? Or do they say, oh, look at the awesome things they've done, but they're kind of weird, they love Jesus too. You know, so like, but do they even know we exist? That's one of the issues we have to deal with. The other one is unity, and as JR said, that's one of our 4 values. That's kind of one of my job descriptions is to help promote our part of the unity of the body of Christ, and especially locally. You know, we feel like if we're going to do this alone and try to be the church alone, then that's kind of dumb. The church is much bigger than us. We're the small C. The big C includes Wes and you guys and all of us, and we're all part of the same thing. So how are we as the well connected to the local body of Christ and the global body of Christ? How are we promoting that? And the 4th one, like I said, I can never remember 4 things at once. What did I say? Justice, locality, unity, and who's the pastor of this church?
You're too young.
I know. I can sometimes not remember my wife's name. Oh, okay, sorry. Oh, this is a hard one to remember. Discipleship. Maybe you've heard of it. It's obviously not very important. Yeah, I know. And discipleship. So if we're not making disciples, obviously there's a problem. If people aren't becoming more like Jesus, and we're not intentionally and actively teaching each other to be more like Jesus, then all the other stuff that's actually one of the first ones we talk about. So those are our 4 measuring tools, and so we talk about success in terms of those things. That's our measuring. So almost in a sense, you know, someone recently said, I'm not sure who it is, that story is a universal measurement of life. So, or measurement of success, or something like that. So we really count stories of those, especially around those 4 things. Are people becoming like Jesus? Are people following Jesus? Are people, are we impacting our local community? That's a measurement for us. You know, are we actually taking part in issues of justice? Are we promoting issues of justice? Are we involved in something else? Unity. See, I actually pulled them off pretty quick there. But are we involved locally? And so when we look at those 4 things, and I feel like if 5 years from now we're doing those 4 things well, I'd say, awesome. And we stop there. And hopefully, I think in the midst of that, growth will probably come. People will come to faith. People will join our community. But we also know that in our culture, people get sent from our community a lot. We talk about being a community that makes, trains, and equips disciples for participation in God's work in the world. So understanding that a lot of what we are as a sending church, I think we've probably, not only do we send people out each week into the workplaces, but we've also sent a number of people out into other parts of the country. We have a couple in Michigan who's part of a local church there, and they're involved in later leadership. Brad, the pastor I started the church with, is in Michigan. He's a pastor in at a church in Minneapolis. We have a couple that's moved to Washington, who's involved in the local church out there. A couple who moved to Las Vegas. We've got a couple who moved to Maryland. I mean, I feel like we just send people out all the time because we're a fairly young church. We're always sending it out, and we always do think, oh man, we're losing that couple. That stinks. But we're kind of flipping that around, saying, oh, we're sending that couple. And now that we know that we're doing a lot of sending, we're saying, while we're here, are we training people to be disciples of Jesus and be involved in what he's doing in the world? If we're not doing that, we've failed in terms of preparing them for what God has for them in the future. And so we're okay with people moving away. It stinks. And I think on some level we should be called longevity in a community, but God calls as he calls, and I can't argue with that. So we better be training people to be like Jesus and to follow Jesus and to be part of the church while they're here, or else what are we doing? So that's kind of our measuring system. Like JR said, or I think Wes said too, our building is kind of a unique place. We meet in a warehouse. which from the outside, and as you walk up to it, like I feel really bad for first-time visitors on some level, because you pull into this industrial park and you're trying to drive and you're like, what? There's a church here? It's like all these industrial buildings are like, company vans and stuff, and there's this little, all we have is like this little sign that says The Well. It's like this big on the street. And when you see that, we have a big sign on the wall, but even like this is wall and there's no door. I mean, I'd love to hear your experience coming when you came last time. But like, where the heck am I going? So you kind of park where all the cars are, and like if you ever seen those movies where like there's like undercover poker hall, you like gotta slide the door and you're like, secret password. I almost feel like people are wondering like, is there a password? But we have a door, it's got a window on it, so hopefully you can tell you walking. You made it in, so.